Are you interested in discovering the spiritual and theological mysteries of the Old Testament, as well as exploring the current historical and archaeological evidence that supports or confounds the biblical narrative? If so, prepare to have your eyes opened as we journey to Damascus. Hello there, and welcome to St. James's Journey to Damascus. We are in part 3 of our journey into the book of 1 Kings. It's a rousing bunch of stories here, all going very well. It's exciting, and I can't wait to tell you more this week about King Solomon, about the time of the 10th century BC in Israel. But before we get started, in my exuberance in the last video, I made a mistake about a picture that we had up that I'd like to correct. It's this picture that you see behind me right now. To be clear, there were 2 different temples built in Jerusalem over the centuries. The first one was Solomon's temple, which is what we think we are seeing in this. Some of these sections of these walls here are from Solomon's temple in the 10th century BC. After that was destroyed, a second temple was built in Jerusalem just before and completed just before the time of Jesus. And that is the temple which there is still a large foundation wall from in Jerusalem, which is the Wailing Wall. Last week, I think I mentioned that the Wailing Wall was a part of the foundations of Solomon's temple, which it is not. So, sorry for the blunder. Want to set the record straight on that. And now I guess we can move ahead with our next chapter. Today we're going through chapters 7 through 9. Usually we get through more chapters than that, but we have a lot of pictures to go through, a lot of archaeology to talk about in the last part of it. So probably about as far as we're going to get in the half hour or so that we try to allot for these videos. So moving forward, 1 Kings chapter 7. In the 7th chapter, it begins with a description of some of the other construction work that was done by Solomon. According to the Bible, Solomon had many construction projects that he got done during his monarchy, during his reign. Much of it with help from and in conjunction with King Hiram, who was the king of Tyre, which was a Phoenician port, city, fortress, state, who both David, Solomon's father, and Solomon had a relationship with Hiram that was very friendly, and they worked together in the region. Of the various buildings that, some of them that Solomon is known for, I'm going to show you a picture here of the whole temple complex. It wasn't just the temple, there was a whole complex that Solomon put together. At the top of this picture, let me try to get out of the way, I think it's right over here. At the top of this picture, you can see the temple, which is the just slightly smaller rectangle inside the large rectangle. The larger rectangle is the outer court. Then just below that, you'll see another building. That is the Solomon's Palace with Pharaoh's daughter's house, which Solomon built for her, attached to the palace, on the back side of it. Below that, we have Solomon's, the throne room, where Solomon held court. People would come around and sit there and listen to his judgments. Foreign dignitaries who might come to visit him were brought into that place, and that's where he held his daily court and some of his larger events, hosting guests. Next to that, we have the throne room, and that throne room was actually where those things took place. Below that is the pillar hall, and then below that is what was called the forest of Lebanon. So this is all a part of a complex that Solomon built in Jerusalem. It is all surrounded by a great wall with a couple of entrances into there. We showed that picture with all the rocky outcroppings there of walls was some of the walls, they believe, from this. It was certainly from that time period, and they matched much of the description. So this was one of the biggest and well-known projects that Solomon put together during his time. But that wasn't all of it. There's a great description of finishes and furniture made by a man named Huram, Huram. Huram was a renowned artisan who was half Israelite, half Phoenician. He lived in Phoenicia, I believe up in the city-state area of Tyre, and Hiram put him on loan to Solomon. We were told he was a fantastic craftsman of the work that he did. We have an artist rendition here, again, of Solomon's temple. And you can see by the front door, let's see, I'm trying to figure out what that is. Front door down here, there are two large columns you can see at the front door. Those were made of bronze. They were some 27 feet tall with 7-foot tall bronze capstones on top and of a circumference of 18 feet. You can also see that there's a huge water basin. It's back over here. This water basin has 12 large oxen under it, and it is called the sea. Perhaps the reason for being called the sea is this basin held some 11,000 gallons of water. That's a lot of water. This next picture I have for you is a picture of an artist's rendition of the description we get from the Bible of the sea with the cattle, oxen underneath it that support it. The circumference around this was some 45 feet, and it was a huge cauldron. What else do we have? In this next picture, you'll be able to see we have a cutaway of the temple. Let me try to get out of the way of this a little bit. And in the cutaway, you can see the front entrance into the temple. I don't know if you can make out all the details here, but in this cutaway, you can see that the temple walls are carved and covered in gold, as was the floor and the ceiling. There's an altar, a golden altar that is carved and ornate. There's the two giant cherubim that are in the Holy of Holies with the Ark of the Covenant underneath it. Of the other various things that Huram made, besides the two pillars, the two capitals, there were two networks of interwoven golden chains around the capitals that each had 200 golden pomegranates hanging from. He made 10 huge water carts with huge basins on them. You can see some of those in the pictures, and bronze wheels, the sea with the 12 oxen, ash buckets, shovels, bowls, the golden altar, golden lampstands, and all manner of golden articles, we're told. No doubt this was a phenomenal place to behold, indicative of the legend of Solomon that's come down over the ages, and of the wealth of Israel during that time. Of all of the construction, it's told that it took, I guess that's later in my notes. I'll get to how long it took. When they did complete the work on the temple and the compound with the various buildings in it, Solomon, we're told, gathered together all of the elders and the leaders of the 12 tribes of Israel and all their families and all these extended people, and they brought the ark out of the city of David, and they had a huge celebration, as you could imagine, where they brought the ark down to be put into the temple. They brought also the sacred tent that had housed it for all these many years, along with all of the sacred vessels. According to the description in the Bible of this celebration, we are told that they sacrificed so many sheep, goats, and cattle that no one could keep count of how many they had sacrificed. Then the priests carried the ark into the Holy of Holies. You can see we have a little picture here. Solomon comes up to the temple stairs, and he starts a blessing towards the temple and all of the people who had come that day to this great event. The priests carried the ark into the Holy of Holies, the innermost holy room, and placed the ark under the wings of the cherubim. Nothing was in the ark except for the 2 stones that Moses had placed in them on Mount Sinai, we're told. When the priests came out of the Holy and Holies, the Bible says there was a thick cloud, which you can see in this carving and this picture from a carving done after that. And you can see that the priests are running out of the temple because this thick, dark cloud, which was the glory of God, filled the temple and stopped the service, and they all had to run for their lives out of the temple, scared to death of this whole thing. And it was the presence of the Lord, which we're told filled the temple. When Solomon and the priests got outside, Solomon turned and blessed the people before blessing the temple, and sang a long, very heartfelt prayer to God, and a long, long blessing. I'm not going to repeat here. I encourage you to go back to this passage, the 6th chapter, the 6th verse. No, this is the 8th verse. Let me get it straight. The 8th chapter in 1 Kings. And Solomon has this very heartfelt prayer to God, thanking the Lord for all he had done for him and for his father David and for the people of Israel for these past many years. He asks forgiveness in advance for the sins that the people will commit in the future. He says, for who has not sinned? Asking God to be understanding and patient with the people in the years to come. We're told that people came from far and wide for this great celebration, and the celebration went on for 14 days. That's when I find out, and I pass on to you, that the construction of the royal palace complex with the temple took some 20 years. Wow. Certainly if you are working on a huge construction project of this magnitude, dedicated to the love and grace of God that God has bestowed upon you and all the people of your land, you would have a huge celebration. I can see 14 days easy. So they had this great celebration, we're told, and after which all the people went back to their homes happy and satisfied and blessed by all that God had done for Israel and for their people and their families. So, there we are. As we slip into the 9th chapter, after Solomon finished building all he set out to, the Lord appeared to Solomon and said, I have heard your prayer, and I have made this temple a holy place. It is dear to my heart, and I will always, I'm paraphrasing here a little, I will always look over it as I promised David, your father, and your descendants will always sit on the throne of Israel. However, God often has a however. However, if your descendants abandon me, if they worship other gods, then I will uproot Israel from this land. I will reject this temple, and Israel will be the object of ridicule and mockery among the nations. So, God strikes a little deal with Solomon here, and as many of the deals we've heard about in the Old Testament before this, God wants to bless his chosen people. He wants to bless its leaders. He wants to give them all the great things of the earth. However, if they bring other false gods in and they do not do as he commands, no promises, all bets are off. Okay. So after this, Solomon, we're told in a quick little, kind of funny, short, brief couple of verses, that after this, Solomon gave King Hiram 20 towns in Galilee. But when Hiram came to inspect the towns, he was not pleased, he was not impressed. He said, these towns are worthless, and therefore he gave the area the name Worthless. However, we're told he still paid Solomon 9,000 pounds of gold for them. What I take from that story is I got to think that Hiram was in a partnership with Solomon to some degree, but I'm sure as far as Hiram was concerned, it was a partnership that kept him from being at odds with Solomon and this great, powerful nation right to his south. And Hiram wanted to stay in good relationship with Solomon, having sent him craftsmen and cedars of Lebanon, and as we'll find out later, meant to teach his people how to be great sailors and help them build ships and build cities and ports and many, many things that Hiram did with Solomon. But I imagine he got these towns that Solomon gave him, and he didn't think much of them. However, he was still going to pay Solomon for the region that he got, and apparently without a whole lot of complaint, although he did give it a name that stressed just how displeased he was with the situation. Now, Solomon, we are told, had other work projects, including reconstruction of cities of Hazor, Megiddo, and Gezer. Gezer's an interesting one because also in the story we're told that Gezer, which if you'll probably remember, is where it was a Philistine city, and we're told that Pharaoh came to Gezer and attacked it, conquered it, killed all of its inhabitants, and burned it to the ground as a wedding present for his daughter. I would have thought some nice china would have maybe done the job. But this was his gift to his daughter. So apparently she got the region, and to build on that gift, Solomon went in and rebuilt Gezer as an Israelite city and as a part of his portion as a gift to his wife, the daughter of Pharaoh. Okay. Then we're told that Solomon also built up other cities. He built supply centers. He built stations for his chariots and horses to protect the land. He also built projects in Israel as well as Lebanon. And to do a lot of this work, he conscripted for labor peoples of the lands that he had conquered, even descendants of peoples in the lands that he had conquered. We're told that no Israelites were put to work as laborers in these projects, that Israelites were given jobs in the army as soldiers, captains, generals, charioteers, all the various roles, captain, police, but all the various roles for the army. They also took roles in the government and managing the nation of Israel, government roles and leadership, as well as supervisors over these foreigners who were laborers doing all these projects in the land of Israel and Lebanon. Okay. Let's see. So am I here already? This is some, I've been looking forward to this next part here. This is some of my favorite part I want to talk to you about today. We're told that Solomon also built a fleet of ships and put them in the port city fortress that he had built called Ezion Geber. Ezion Geber. And this port was built on the Sinai coast of the Red Sea, what we would today call the Gulf of Aqaba, which would give him access from this port to, supposedly, figuratively, India, Arabia, Egypt, Africa, and however far the Israelites might have been able to sail. We are told that Hiram sent men to work with the Israelites to build this city port of Ezion-Geber. The ships and crews, we're told, were made up of both Israelites and sailors from Hiram's city-state of Tyre. The Phoenicians were known in history. We know that they were great sailors, that they sailed all around the Mediterranean and beyond. They were some of the greatest merchants of all the Mediterranean Sea. Now, because of this relationship that Solomon had with Hiram, he was able to get these great seafaring people to come down and train his sailors and be on the ships with them to train them, so that they could therefore go down through the Red Sea and into the Indian Ocean region and bring back riches from all of these lands down there. Okay, so these ships, we are told, sailed to Ophir, O-P-H-I-R. You may not have heard of Ophir before, where we are told they brought back 16 tons of gold from. But Ophir, what you have heard of, I'm sure, is the location of Solomon's mines. Okay, you thought that was just a bad movie on TV. Well, no, Solomon's mines was a real thing. Solomon had a gold mine, which they mined thousands of tons of gold out of. They would have brought the gold from the famed Solomon's mines. Now, there was an archaeological site at a place called Tel Kassil. At Tel Kassil, they found a potsherd and a fragment of pottery, and it had a Hebrew inscription on it that said, "Gold of Ophir for the temple of Horon," or it might actually be for the town of Beth Horon. But this was a little piece of archaeological proof that that gold was put into clay pots and moved around the nation of Israel. Here at the, so you might ask, I'm hoping you're asking because it's right here in my script, I need to talk about it. You might ask, where was the port of Ezion-Geber? I'm glad you asked, because I have a beautiful picture right here of what archaeologists believe to be the island of, which was Ezion-Geber. Today it is called Gezeret Faran. It is located just off the coast of Sinai. As you can see in this, in this next picture, we have a drawing of the island, and it has this very large, it's just off the coastline of Sinai, and it has a very large natural port inside of, on the south edge of it there, which I'm sure you can pretty clearly see. This port had a natural sandbank that closed much of its front side entrance. Archaeological evidence shows that there was a great amount of stone and a huge, large stone walls that were built all the way around this entire island with a series of 9 fortress towers built into the walls around this island. There were 2 fortress towers at the entrance, which had been made smaller by these rocks, construction work brought in, so that only one ship at a time could come into this port. The port itself was really only big enough for one ship at a time, but the evidence shows that a ship would come in and that they would unload the ship in this little protected port. They would then take the goods to one of the many buildings that are all over this island. This island's covered up with all kinds of structures, foundations of structures. And then they would use barges to take these goods from the island back over to the mainland. All right, moving along. I want to talk about this a little bit more though. They also made man-made jetties, which I'm going to show you some things on in just a minute here, which helped calm the waters of this area between the island and the Sinai mainland, so that the part between the island and the mainland kind of created its own harbor, if you will, where the stormy waters that normally come up from the south were broken up by these man-made jetties that they put out there, as well as some natural barriers of sandbars that were there. In this next picture, you can see the inlet at Jezreel Pharaon with its built-up fortresses. Okay. Sorry. Where am I? Okay. Something doesn't seem that, yeah. That looks like it right there. That's the port which is going to be right over here, which you can see if you could see it up close, you can see it's very rocky all around it and some of the foundations. And this was not only they not only found remnants of foundations that all built during Solomon's time, but this was also Byzantine fortresses built there, as well as Muslim fortress built during the time of medieval times. Thank you. So I have another picture here. I think we have it. It's I don't know what picture we're using next. There's a picture I'm going to ask my wonderful director here to put up. That's the one I want to see right there. I somehow seem to have lost the description of what I want to talk about. Oh no, I found it. Here it is. Here we are. Okay, we're going to get all caught up here. This is kind of interesting because Jezreel Pharaon, the island, and the fortresses there are extremely typical to Phoenician fortresses built all around the region because they were a seafaring people. In the top left corner here, what we have is the city of Sidon. That's in the top left. The city of Tyre in the top right over here, which both are off the coast of Lebanon. And I'm going to explain these pictures a little bit more in just a minute. The city of Arward is in the lower left, which is north of Syron. The city of Atlit is in the middle here at the bottom. That is off the coast of Israel. And then the city of Mutya is off the west coast of Sicily, and that's in the bottom left-hand corner. Finally, I want to point out at the top center is Ezion Geber, which, like I said, was the port city for Solomon. What you're seeing in these drawings is the long dark blue line is the mainland. And typical of the Phoenicians is they would pick a spot that had an island close to the mainland. Then they would fortify, and what you're seeing in the dark blue longer line is the fortifications that were all along the coastline as a part of the complex that would work with the island. Then they would put fortifications, the dark lines you see around the circle for the islands, all around the islands as well. And then they would put man-made jetties out across those areas to protect the area between the island and the mainland as a staging area for ships that would come, and then they would take the goods to the island. From the island, they would bring them by barge to the mainland. And this is a typical city, fortress, merchant fortification that the Phoenicians would build. And so in helping Solomon to build his own great seaport fortress merchant place, you can see that it was built very much in the same kind of layout that the Phoenicians built all of their own ports. Okay, whew, that was rough. Glad we got through that. All right, now we're going to go back to just a couple of last minute pictures here. I want to show you this picture of a partial surviving, actually I think I'm standing in front of it, so hopefully it's somewhere right over here, of a tower, one of the fortress towers around the island. And this one actually has a foundation that would date back to Solomon's times, with walls extended up higher that were from Byzantine times, as well as walls even higher than that that were built during medieval times. So this is the best surviving tower fortress on the island that we have today. And in this last picture I'm going to show you, it may not mean a whole lot to you, but I'm going to try to get out of the way of this best I can. If you can look close, you can see that the rocks kind of come out and into the water. This is the shoreline remnants of one of the jetties, and it is located just opposite that harbor entrance you saw out on the island. And so their construction was not only of fortresses on the land and on the sea there, but warehouses, towers, jetties to protect the ships. It was a real business, fortified business that was taking place here. You might remember in one of my earlier videos I mentioned of the riches of Israel. Much of it came from the fact that not only did Solomon have a mine and several mines, which there are mines all up and down the coast of Arabia that they haven't decided which, if any of them, we could actually call Solomon's mines, but there's much gold in that region. But we're told also, even in the Bible, that some of the goods that were brought by Solomon's ships into this port contained silver, gold, copper, spices, fabrics. The wealth of all that region, peacocks, apes, rare animals to these people in this area. And Solomon would have brought many of these goods, some of them to stay in Israel, but much of this would have been brought from this location through the Sinai Peninsula up into Israel and then exported by the Phoenicians and by the Israelites, particularly the tribe of Dan, out into the Mediterranean region and exporting these goods for sale, and Israel was making a bundle of money on it all. Also, Solomon's mines, we're told, gave up tons and tons of gold. The location of Ophir, where the mine is said to be, has never been positively identified, although there are several locations of gold deposits up and down the Arabian coast. I'm out of time. It's been a lot of fun. This is great stuff. I find this very exciting. I'm sorry if I get kind of excited and have a hard time following my notes sometimes, but there's just a ton of information here I'm trying to get through quickly. I could probably spend much more time in smaller amounts, but we'd never get through the Old Testament. So I try to move us along pretty good, best I can. Sorry we only got through 3 chapters. I was hoping we might get to the story of a queen who came to visit Solomon, whose name I will not use yet. Perhaps we'll be able to get to that in our next video. I just want to say thank you for tuning in on our videos. I have a lot of fun doing these. I hope you enjoy watching them, and I hope you'll be with us again in our next one to continue our journey to Damascus. Bye-bye. We hope you have enjoyed our discoveries for today. Please join us next time as we explore the insights of the Old Testament on The Journey to Damascus.